I don't know who it was that was just talking about someone they're texting or something, but you were not on mute. So
oh, sorry. Hold on. I have to
all on mute.
hold on 1 second. Okay. I have to mute the YouTube.
Eleanor, do I call the meeting to?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, I have to mute things while I'm talking. You should read the script as it's written, and that will be calling the meeting to order when you do the roll call.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So the first thing is to confirm member access. As a preliminary matter, my name is Susan McCarthy. I'm the chair of the Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lisa Botticelli.
Present.
Okay. Ed Toole.
Present.
Michael O'Mara.
Present.
Ruth Plandowski, Rugged Scott Beach Plum Village. Tucker Holland, Rugged Scott Beach Plum Village.
Here.
Chris Young, Rugged Scott Beach Plum Village. Peter McEachran, Rugged Scott Beach Plum Village. James Timmons, Rugged Scott Beach Plum Village.
Here.
And George Pucci, Town Council.
I think George is going to try and log on later. He had a court date. I see that Rhett just logged on, and Sarah seems to be struggling with the audio, but
I did see Sarah's card, like her.
yeah, she's connecting to audio, so I think she's trying. But
Okay.
Rhett is on there, so if you want to.
Mark him.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Sorry, computer, whatever.
It's okay. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please be sure to properly leave the meeting when your matter has been discussed or upon final adjournment. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless either chair notes otherwise. Okay. So we are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And this is not the way we usually hold our meetings, but I think it will be beneficial because last time it got a little confusing, I thought. For the items that do have public comment, after the members have spoken, then I will give the public an opportunity to comment as follows. So staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website, and we will all do our best to address the questions and comments. And then when we do vote, each vote will be taken by roll call. Okay, so those are the rules. So this is our regularly scheduled monthly meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's Thursday, June 11th. And would someone like to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, so Ed made the motion and Mark, was that you? Michael seconding it. Okay. So I will go down the list and we can all save our eyes. All right. So all those in favor: Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Ed Toole,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Koziak,
Aye.
and Jeff there.
Aye.
Okay, that's 5, so we're good. So next is the approval of the minutes. I did not have any comments or corrections on the May 14th one, the March 12th. There were a couple corrections that were made. Does anyone else?
I had a small one on page. Let me see which date it is. Sorry. Of the May meeting, it was page 5 of 6, where it says that I'm the speaker. The garage built on affordable lots were long before it came to our attention that they were built without permission or modification. I just think it should say or modification of the comprehensive permit.
Okay.
With that, I'm fine.
Anyone else have any comments or corrections on the minutes? Okay. So why don't, if the board wants to, we can have a motion to approve the March minutes and then hold the May 14th for revision. Would someone like to?
Susan, I'm fine with voting May as well with that revision.
You can do that.
Okay, so let's do that then.
If everyone agrees, it's fine.
Okay, so would someone make the motion to approve the March 12th minutes as amended and the May 14th minutes with the one change being made to Ed's, the note that Ed made?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so Ed makes the motion, and when someone second?
I'll second.
And Lisa seconds. Okay, so again, I'll do roll call and I'm just gonna go down the list again. So all those in, when I call your name, if you're in favor, say aye. Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Ed Toole,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Koziak,
Aye.
and Jeff there.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so for old business, the first application is 9-20 Timothy E. Quinslick and Elizabeth A. Quinslick, 88 Quidnet Road. They have requested to continue to the July 9th meeting. Would someone make the motion to continue this one?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. And Michael, that was you seconding?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so again, I'm just gonna read down the
Ed
list.
Ed had a conflict with that one.
I know. Yep, so
No,
does.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, so he can't make the motion?
No, he's not sitting on it. So
Yeah, my bad.
All right, that's fine.
I take back my motion.
Okay,
I will make that motion, Madam Chair.
okay.
And I'll second it.
Okay, so that was, Michael made the motion, Jeff seconded, and I will read down, starting with you, Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Kosiak. Oh, wait, sorry, hold on. So I'm sitting on this, sorry, Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
and Jeff.
Aye.
Okay. And our next one is application 11-20. This one is Peter J. McKay and Allison McKay and David P. McKay and Ann M. Faniff, trustee of the McKay Faniff Family Trust, 21 and 25 Monahans Road. They have also requested to continue until July. So would someone make that motion?
I will make that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, and so Michael made the motion, someone to second?
I'll second.
Lisa seconds, okay, so I will read down the people sitting. Myself, Susan McCarthy, aye. Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Ed Toole,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
and Karen Kosiak.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so our next matter of business is application 12-20 Ann Maletta. This is 15 Broadway.
Would you like me to share screen for the portion of the packet that's dedicated to this? Because there are new materials that Ms. Fader submitted as per request. They're in the packet, but for the public.
Yeah,
Sure, that'd be great.
that'd be helpful.
All right. And by the way, it's Karen Kosiak.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I knew I was saying it wrong, but I couldn't help
It
myself.
doesn't matter. I got over it in first grade.
Okay.
Sorry, Karen. Okay, so what page? We're on page 81. So, Ms. Fader, do you want to go over the new materials that you submitted to us?
So I need to unmute myself, correct?
You are.
You're unmuted.
Okay. Yes. Yes, my name is Marcia Slater and I'm the architect for Ann Maletta at 15 Broadway. And I'm here today with Patrick McCarthy, who's the general contractor, and Eddie Ward, who's the HVAC contractor. So I would like to give a bit of a summary of the additional information, the supplement that was submitted, and then turn it over to Eddie Ward for more of the technical information. It was understood from the May 14th meeting that the board wished to have additional information that would explain the decision-making process for our proposed location for the HVAC, for the heat pump, with the intent to find a location that would take us as far out of the setback as possible, either through a different piece of equipment or a different location. The supplemental information that's been submitted includes exterior photographs, and I understood that there were members that would also had hoped to do a drive-by the location. In addition to the photographs, you'll find a site plan showing the various options. And again, this is the process that we're documenting for the zoning board, which is a process that we engaged ourselves in trying to determine the best location along with the best equipment. So you'll see that there are several different options on the Broadway side, the Broadway elevation. And it is scaled in, showing, I think, what was requested, which was the narrower equipment. And you'll see there's also an elevation drawing, which shows the equipment scaled in where it would be right up against either location on the front Broadway street, but it wouldn't fit under those existing windows. But it would be given the 10-foot setback, it would be out of the setback, but it would be in front of the windows. And I think I've provided information also regarding, I think the most critical information is in the photographs and the elevations that show that we don't have the wall space to locate either piece of equipment, either the narrower piece or the proposed Bosch. And so I think what's on the screen now, you're looking at the proposed location, which is on the southeast portion of the house. The other piece of information that Eddie Ward will speak more about is the difference in the types of equipment, because the Bosch equipment that we're proposing is specifically a top discharge of the air that's being exhausted, which will only work in that location. The other equipment has, which is the narrower, I think on the spreadsheet you see there's a carrier, there's a heel, there's a train. Those all have a side discharge, which would not work in that location. But if I can right now turn that over to Eddie to speak more specifically about the equipment. He is here in my office, so I can just change seats so Eddie can speak to that equipment.
This is Eddie Ward. What she's speaking of with the vertical discharge of the Bosch unit in our proposed location, there are several reasons why I chose this. It's modulating, so it's very efficient, it's quiet, and the vertical discharge allows it to function in a narrow alleyway like that. The horizontal discharge, the other three that are there, they are narrower in the sense of spacing off the building, but with that side discharge in that narrow area, it's going to cause the air to recycle on itself, and the equipment's not going to function well. And in extreme cases, because this is also a heat pump, it's not just an AC unit. Extreme cold days, the system will fail on a low pressure due to reusing that same air, getting colder and colder. On the hottest days of the year, it would trip out on a high pressure because of recycling the hot air. So in regards to our proposed location, the Bosch is the only one on the market that I am aware of. Let me just be clear with that. The only one I'm aware of that is going to work with the equipment we have and function correctly. The other units, consideration for the neighbors, maybe not property lines, but they are quieter. They are more efficient, and due to their height, rather the Bosch is quieter and more efficient due to the height and such. I don't feel that the others are nearly as good of a product to do the job or maintain any historic value to the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else present to present on this one before I go to the board members?
Patrick was attempting. I'm not sure if he's made it. Could you tell if Patrick has made it online?
Yeah, I'm on here.
Okay, Patrick, do you have anything that you wanted to add to Eddie and Marcia's presentation at this point?
I guess not just the window on the front of the house. It's if you put the unit in front of it, it comes right up over the window. It's about 4 feet tall, and the top bottom of the window is 2 feet off the ground. So
And-
that's all I would have to
Okay.
say.
And the area from the photos where you're proposing to put the unit, it will be sitting basically almost like under two of the homeowner's windows, correct?
Yeah, but there are windows that aren't really facing the street.
Right, I was just thinking, that the other neighbor on Front Street, I believe, is the one that has the concern about the noise, and just seeing from the photo that where it's placed is going to be directly under two of the homeowners' windows. Obviously she's going to be concerned about noise as well. All right, let me go down the board.
Could I just say one thing about
Sure.
the concerned neighbor is there's two walls between the unit and the concerned neighbor,
Mhm.
because there's an outdoor shower there at the end of the alleyway. So we'd have to pass through two walls.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so let me start with Lisa. Do you have anything that you'd like to ask the applicant?
No, I actually appreciate that they went through the effort of locating other options. I'm in agreement that the first option that they suggested is the best. Given the historic nature of the structure, I don't think having the taller units facing Broadway makes sense from a historic perspective, or even in the front yard, even if they were within the setback. I'd much rather have them in the setback on the side than on the front of the house.
And let's see, Ed, do you have any further comments or questions on this one?
Yeah, my only comment is I did walk around the house, and as long as the neighbor directly adjacent isn't in an opposition, which she's not, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Michael?
Yes, I walked around as well. I could be wrong about this, but I think the window in the front of the house is the same size window as the one in the facing southeast. And I also am not sure how far this equipment has to be from a window, but as it's drawn, it looks like it's probably closer than it should be, but that's up to the engineers, I guess. One thing that it may be available, but I haven't seen it, and that is what is the proposed distance from the condenser to the property line in the proposed location?
Looks like 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Does it say that somewhere?
Yeah, on the option plan, where it has option 1 through 5 plus the proposed location.
Okay.
Unless that dimension is, Michael, that dimension actually could be from the building to the fence line, and then maybe that condensing unit is slightly back, so we could stipulate no closer than X.
Yeah, what's X though?
I don't know, because it doesn't appear that there's a dimension on the
Ed?
Yeah.
It says 0.8535 from the condensing unit to the property line.
Lisa, what page is that on?
Whatever, she's screen sharing it right now. So the 0.5 was to the building.
I got you.
Okay.
So what is that, Lisa, in inches roughly?
Well, 7/8 maybe. 3/4 would be 0.75.
10 inches.
Oh, no, that's a
10
foot.
inches.
I'm sorry. So that's 9 inches. Sorry. Yeah, 10 inches.
All right.
Can we just leave it as what they've put on this plan as the exhibit? That it will be no closer than 0.8535 feet to the property line?
Okay, now I see it. Yeah, that's fine with me. Will the equipment work that close to a wall?
I assume that Eddie has looked at this and that they wouldn't have placed it like that if it didn't function.
Correct.
Eddie, can you comment on that?
Yes, the equipment will function that way. That's part of why we chose this. The vertical discharge would not. So in this case, the system will function fine.
Well, just Eddie, these are vertical discharge.
I'm sorry, the vertical
lateral
discharge,
discharge
the
would not.
horizontal discharge would not.
Just to be clear.
Right. Okay. Michael, do you have any other questions or comments at this time?
Not now, thank you.
Okay. Karam, do you have any comments or questions?
Negative.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public that wants to comment on this one, Eleanor?
I'm not seeing any comments. If something pops up in the next minute or so, I will let you know, but there's nothing showing.
Excuse me.
Okay. The one in the letter that we got, I think it was the Front Street people. I wrote it down, I think. 97. They had a question about, this was Kathy and Joseph Arve at 11 Front Street. They are asking for an assurance that it will be quiet. And then if it's not, what is their recourse? You know, to try to answer that question, the recourse, I guess, would be if it was violating the noise regulations. But I mean, I don't think that's gonna, I don't think it's gonna meet that level. I would think they would their recourse would be to go to their neighbor. I don't, does anyone else think that they have any other, did anyone else want to address this? Okay. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I don't think there is any recourse.
Agreed. Okay. I mean, I just, you know, it appears that they're doing the best they can to get a quiet unit, especially because it's going to be right underneath their windows. So I think that if it.
Could I speak?
Sure.
We did respond to the Arves with a letter and with more information explaining the distance that it was, because in their letter they thought it was really just a few feet away, and it's, you know, in actuality it's about 25, 26 feet away. And as Patrick mentioned, where several different, there's a shower between, and there's a public way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's and again, this is the one of the lowest decibel levels of equipment there is on the market, which is considered to be like speaking voice level. And again, we're across a public way. We're at least 25, 26 feet away from, and explaining this in the letter, we did not have any further response from them.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So, Eleanor, no public comment in the lag time there?
No.
Okay. So does the board wish to discuss this matter further?
I have a question, Susan.
Sure.
Did we have to do anything about the outdoor shower?
No,
No, okay. Because it's a fence?
correct.
It doesn't have a platform, does it?
No, I've been told I'll let Marcia respond, but I was told that they are not putting it on a platform. It is a movable floor surface.
That's correct, Eleanor.
Okay. So if there's no other discussion from the board, would someone like to make a motion to approve the relief as requested?
I make that motion.
Wait a minute, you want to make the motion to approve the relief as requested with the conditions, right? No closer than
8.
8535.
And I would also stipulate no further expansion within the setback without further relief from the board.
And removable floor to the outdoor shower.
Well, that's not part of the request.
Oh, it's not. Okay, fine.
It's shown on the plan, but that's not in the request. They didn't need relief.
Okay,
If they end up doing it that way, they'd have to come back.
okay.
All right, so Lisa's motion is to grant the relief as requested with the condition that the air conditioner is not more than 0.8535 from the, is that from the lot line or the building?
Lot line.
From the lot line. And that there's no further expansion without, in the setback without coming back to us. Does someone want to?
Could I say something just before you finish up?
Sure. Can you just identify yourself again?
Patrick McCarthy.
Thank you.
There's a little closet on the there's an outdoor shower and there's a little storage area. Does that also have to have a removable floor?
Is
Or
it
is that
new?
allowed? Yeah,
Can we see it where it is on the plan?
it's between Front Street and the outdoor shower. It's just about 18 inches deep.
So it doesn't show up on your plan?
I guess not.
And it's in the setback then.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, it has to be a fence, not a little storage area in the,
Yeah.
and isn't there a trash enclosure over on the other alleyway that's been built?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
Trash
smack.
enclosures, I think can be in the setback if they're separated from the building.
Right.
There's no setback there. It's 0.
No, I'm saying that they can be within the setback if they're not attached to the structure.
No, but what I'm saying, Lisa, is it's not on their lot, period.
Oh, it's in the way.
It's in the little way.
And is it
We
is
don't-
it
we
a
don't have
movable
picture of it?
one?
I mean, it's movable, I think. I mean, I didn't scrutinize it, but,
So Patrick,
yeah, it is movable.
but it's in the way, so that has to move.
Well, there's gas there, and there's everybody out there has put them in the alleyways, but they're completely movable.
Patrick, is it new?
Yeah,
And is the gas in it new?
no,
No, that shows up on the as-built.
Okay.
You see the propane tank is shown on the
I
as-built.
didn't see the propane tank. So
Fine.
what?
and we built it really narrow.
As-built, maybe, I don't think it's there. Is the gas now in that little enclosure?
No, it's just in the alleyway. It's always been there.
It just says propane tank on the as-built.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can't read it, but yeah, I mean, as long as the trash unit isn't attached to the building,
We're not blessing it.
quote unquote movable. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have purview.
Right.
What about this enclosure? Because this closet is attached to the building, correct? It just doesn't have a floor?
It doesn't have a floor yet. That's why I was bringing up the
That's a little
question.
different than a fence.
Yes.
It'll look like a door.
So wait, so the thing that we're talking about that's attached to the building between the shower and where the proposed AC is, it's connected to the
Yes.
house, and it's like, is it like a thing you'd put over an electric meter? You know, like a
No.
little.
It's just part of the fence. It's just part of the fence enclosure, and on the other side is a shower and a small space where you could have some storage.
So it's not shingled.
No, it's just part
Okay.
of the fence, no.
So as long as it doesn't have a floor, then I'm okay with it. I thought it was more like a shingled lean-to.
Right.
No,
Right.
it's not. It's not a shed. It's just part of the fence, and you can open a door and there'd be no floor in there.
Is there a picture of it? Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity.
No.
But we haven't put a floor in it yet, Lisa, so that's
No,
why I
I
was
just meant
asking.
the enclosure.
It'll look like the shower, the outdoor shower. It's just that there's 2 sections. But we won't have a floor in any of it.
Okay.
Oh, so it's a continuation of the fence and it's connected to the shower?
That's correct. That's correct. So yes, it's been gone through HDC and it's been approved as the fence. as part of the fence in the shower enclosure without a platform flooring.
Ed, are you okay with that?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't have the floor and as long as that trash enclosure on the other side isn't attached to the building, I'm good with it.
Okay, so so we can continue with Lisa's motion to grant the relief as requested with those two conditions. And I can do, would someone like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Ed seconds. I will read down the roll call and we can vote. So Susan McCarthy, aye. Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Ed Toole,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
and Karen Kozatak.
Aye.
Okay. So that motion carries. So we can move on to new business, which is, the first one is application 8-20 Nantucket Westmore Farms LLC, 6 and 8 Old Westmore Farm Road. They have requested to continue without opening until August 13th, 2020. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
And so Lisa makes the motion. Would someone second?
Second.
So Michael seconds. Okay. So I'm just going to read down the first 5 names. Lisa,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
and Jeff.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Our next application is 10-20. And that is Sarah F. Alger, trustee, 711 nominee trust, 7 and 11 Squam Road. Sarah Alger representing.
Madam Chair?
Yes, did I miss
Okay,
something?
if I don't vote on this?
Yeah.
I don't really have a conflict, but I finished the house at 13, so you have plenty of members. I'd rather just.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Sarah, are you
I am here.
ready to roll? Okay, so
Ready.
go for it.
So I'm representing the applicant, obviously. With me is our contractor, Red DuPont. He can answer any questions you might have about this. This property has been before you a couple of times, so there's existing special permit relief already in place. We're seeking a modification to alter that approval to allow us to demolish one of the existing dwellings and rebuild it in a conforming location on the property. This property is non-conforming as to use in that it currently is improved with 3 dwellings. It's also non-conforming with respect to side yard setback. 2 of the pre-existing dwellings are in the setback. Otherwise, it more than complies with all of the dimensional requirements of the bylaw, including lot area and ground cover and other setbacks. I think that's kind of the simple explanation. I don't know if you have any specific questions, but we did provide an existing and a proposed conditions plan that shows what we're proposing to do. It's the middle, the structure that's in the middle would be demolished and then reconstructed on the, I guess, north side of the property, but in a conforming location.
Okay, and so that new structure will be completely conforming.
Correct.
And I have, there was no mail on this one, I believe. Let me go through. Do you want Rhett to add anything now, or would you like me to go through?
I don't, unless he wants to. I don't know that he needs to. He needs to, but he's certainly available for questions.
Okay, we'll hold then. So I'm just going to go through the board again, and if anyone has any questions or comments. So starting with you, Ed.
Sarah, I am sufficiently confused by all the plans and whatnot that are in there. Is the failing timber retaining wall, the existing structure was moved at one point further away from the line? Is that correct?
There were structures that were moved, yes, under previous relief.
Right.
That's correct.
So I mean, this goes back, I think it was in 90 or maybe 2015. It shows one of the plans shows, or appears to show, that the retaining wall for the main house, what I'm calling the main house, I don't know what it's called on the plan.
Existing structure, it's this
Yeah.
failing timber retaining wall?
Right, is that's that on another plan, and it's sort of ghosted in there too. It looks like it's on the other property. Has that been taken care of?
How does it show? Let me look
Well,
on
you
my,
have to go to I mean, I can't tell because the plans are blurry, but go to page
138.
Exhibit A,
138.
yes.
that wood retaining wall is still on the neighbor's property.
And it wasn't meant to be moved at some point?
No, I mean, it's just been there forever, but we don't have, it's registered land, so they could ask us to relocate it at any point, but they haven't. And it's just there. We're not proposing any changes with it in connection with this application.
Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's odd.
Okay.
So all you're doing in this application, notwithstanding any other issues, is picking up the house, or not picking up, getting rid of the house. What is that house called? The back house?
Yeah, I think it's not, Jeff hasn't labeled anything on these on the current plans he's given me, but I think it was called the back house originally.
All right, somewhere there's a sketch plan, a roof plan of its new location.
And there's a proposed conditions plan for it.
What page is that on?
It's in the back of the staff report. It's like the second to last page. It was inadvertently left out of the packet.
There it is. There it is.
I remember that note. Okay.
Yeah. So it's
And its dimension, the off the lot line?
Yes.
Yes, 11 feet.
Okay. And it conforms in everything else is conforming.
Correct. We have an oversized lot. We're in a 40,000 square foot zone, and we have like 143,000 square feet, I think, of land area. So, I mean, the lot is enormous.
So it's simply a function of the nonconformity is the 3 dwelling units?
That's why we're here, because of the 3 dwelling units.
And there
Correct.
are only 3, correct?
That is correct.
Even though there are 5 buildings.
Right. Now, Rhett can tell you better than I can what those are used for, but there are 3 dwellings, and then I know one is a garage, and I'm not sure what that existing 870 square foot building is, but there's only 3 dwellings.
Did you say a generator structure in your addendum? I thought
Oh, yeah, there might be a generator structure. That 870 square feet may be a generator structure.
That's a big generator.
Maybe Rhett can talk about what's in the structures.
okay. So Ed, do you have any other comments or questions before I go to Rhett? Because I had the same. I wanted to make sure that that decision in 97 that combined and moved all those the extra dwellings and the tree house and this and that. I wanted to make sure that all that, and I'm sure it was because we had a decision in 2014 as well. But Rhett, could you speak to the structures on this plan and what's what?
Sure. I'm Rhett DuPont. And dwelling number 2 on the plan we're looking at is a 3-bedroom cottage. That's one that in 2015, we picked it up and put a new foundation under it. We moved it off the lot line because it was very close to the lot line. We moved it a little bit. And the other structure that says existing structure, 870 square feet, is an old garage that basically just houses a generator for the property currently. Dwelling number 1 is the main house, which we renovated in 2014, 2015. And then existing structure that's 1,300 and looks like 59 square feet is just a garage. So currently there's 2 habitable buildings on the property. This third one is or was at one point a habitable structure. It has bedrooms and everything in it and a kitchen. But it's been abandoned ever since my client bought it back in 2014.
Abandoned as in not used, but it still
Right.
has its kitchen and its bedrooms, etc.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, it doesn't lose its grandfathered status.
No, because it's still on the property. It still has bedrooms. It still has a kitchen. They're just not using it. It's still there. They're just not living in it. They could.
Okay. Ed, does that answer your questions that you had so far?
So far, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have a question for Red. Why when you picked the building up and moved it dwelling 2, did the retaining wall get impacted? Why didn't it get put on the lot line instead of over the lot line?
It didn't get impacted. That retaining wall actually holds up the earth between the 2 properties. So the neighbor can't see that retaining wall from their yard from 13. So I guess it was never an issue to move it or take it down or anything. So it's
Okay,
still,
so the neighbor's property at 13 is actually higher than 7 and 11.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Michael, do you have any comments or questions for the applicant?
The only comment I have is it appears that the property will be less non-conforming when it's finished. Is that correct?
It will be the same. I don't think there's any change.
There's no change to the setback. So, and this one is compliant as to setbacks.
Okay, but,
And it's currently complying.
okay. I thought I heard somebody say that it was going to get moved further away from the setback.
No.
No, okay.
I think that was the work that was done in to dwelling number 2. I think that was when it was said.
Okay. No, I'm all set.
Well, so Sarah, the existing structure, that's the 1,091 square feet. That's the one we're talking about.
It's the one in the middle that says to be raised or
Yeah.
moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's still, okay. All right. Forget it. I just answered my own question. I had a hard time seeing the numbers. So it's moving closer to the lot line, but it's still outside of the setback. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So, Karam, did you have any questions or comments for Sarah or Rhett?
No.
Okay. Jeff, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Mark, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
And Jim, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. So I don't believe there was any mail on this one. Eleanor, do you have any public comments on this one?
Nothing is showing up.
Okay, great. Would someone like to make a motion for this one? Well, do I need to decide now, Eleanor, who's voting, or will I just decide through roll call?
You can decide through roll call.
Okay, so would someone like to make the motion for?
I'll make a motion to grant the relief as requested.
Okay. And would someone like to second Ed's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Ed made the motion and Michael seconded. I'm just going to read down the list. So all those in favor will say aye. So Susan McCarthy, aye. Ed Toole,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Kozatek,
Aye.
and Jeff Thayer.
Aye.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that motion carries.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Rhett. So our
Thank
next,
you, Rhett.
You're welcome, Sarah.
so our next application is 13-20, Rebecca M. Gilbreth, 92 Hulbert Avenue, and presenting is Dan Malloy, surveyor for the application.
Good afternoon, it's Dan Malloy. We filed a fairly detailed application, if anybody's had a chance to really read it or do a drive-by yet. But the summary of it is there's an existing historic light tower in the front corner of the property. The applicants are in the process of renovating the tower to bring it up to building code requirements. And as part of that renovation, it includes raising it up for floodplain requirements. So and there's no setback, everything right now in terms of setbacks, there are portions of the building and deck that are in the front and side setback. That will remain. The building is only going straight up approximately 2 feet. So there's no change in footprint, no change in use. We're just trying to rehabilitate the structure to current standards and current codes. That really sums up the application. And it does need a variance, obviously, due to the building height going up 2 feet, but the side and front setbacks remain the same.
Does not need a variance. It's a special permit.
Special permit, sorry.
Can I ask you a question, Dan? Why is the floor elevation 9.5? I thought it was 7.5 down there, and then you have to add a foot.
You have to get the top of foundation a foot above, and the floodplain elevation there was being picked up.
I thought it was I thought it was the finished floor had to be a foot above whatever the finished floor, or are they in the velocity zone here?
It's strictly a flood zone. So the flood zone itself is elevation 8, and you have to go a foot above that, which brings you up to 9. And we typically add a few inches just to give the construction a little bit of flexibility.
Okay, you've added 6 inches. Because you're asking for 9.5, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I thought, you know what, I'm working on a project on Wall Street, and I was just told by the surveyor that it's 7.5 there. Does it change to 8?
7 point. The floodplains are usually whole feet, so there's rare portions of Wall Street where it does change between 7, 8, and even 9. It varies considerably depending on where you are on Wall Street.
Okay.
Do you have the map that shows the zones?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Can you?
I don't have it as part of the packet. I could probably find it and show it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Be helpful if I need to know that I need to raise my other floor 6 inches.
Let me just see if I can get that in front of me here.
Summer, while he's doing that, there was none of the abutters commented on this one, right?
No, I did not receive any comments by email or mail or calls.
That's what I thought. I just went to double check.
Yeah, I'm just getting the map here in front of me. 1 minute.
Wait, and what, can you, while you're doing that, can you tell us what's the functionality of the interior?
The interior, I don't know what's happening inside. Whatever's inside of the building now is remaining the same in terms of function.
So it's finished space. I mean, it's considered not storage, that it has to obey
It is
the-
finished to some degree. I have not been inside, so I don't know what degree, but it is finished.
Well, the reason I'm asking the question is certain spaces like garages and things like that don't have to comply with the flood zone. So I'm just curious what the,
I thought it said, Lisa, somewhere. Maybe I'm confusing that with another.
I have a question too. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's let him answer.
Yeah.
So I've got the map here. I'm not sure if I'll be able to share it. You can give it a try if that's okay.
Sure.
It's going to let me. Okay, is that coming up?
Yes.
Okay. So for reference, you can see the town tennis courts, if anybody's seeing that in the background here.
yeah,
Okay. And if I just zoom in, so we are approximately right here under the A in Lane.
yep. Okay,
And that puts us in zone AE elevation 8.
okay,
And there are other zones. Obviously, you go out towards the beach, you're in 9. Different portions again of not Wall Street, Halbert Ave are 9. The majority of Wall Street, I believe, is either a 7 or an 8.
yeah, where does it, yeah, I'll have to just double check that with,
It does change substantially in that entire area, so you really have to check every time you go in that neighborhood.
yeah,
Dan,
So
could you please send that to me so I have it for the file?
Yes.
Thank you.
so I think my only comment is I would like to raise it as little as it needs to be raised. And since I think Mike Sweeney's the contractor
Correct.
and you're a good surveyor, I think you can get closer than 6 inches.
Oh, we can certainly bring it down. I'd like to at least give them 2 or 3 inches of flexibility.
I think that's reasonable.
I don't want to set it right on because it's asking too much to get it perfect.
I think a couple inches is reasonable.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I mean, we're not looking to get any more than we need to build it.
So
I have
Lisa,
a question, Susan.
okay, so go ahead.
Okay, on one of Ethan McMurrow's entryway, I guess you'd call it, coming off of the lighthouse, that doesn't appear to be,
Bottom part of the plan, your site plan, are there 2?
What he's showing here, yeah, there are two light towers. There's one in the back of the property as well. That one's conforming.
So interesting.
that conforms to the floodplain?
No, that one's being raised up as well, but it conforms to zoning. Sorry. But that one doesn't need zoning relief. It's shorter.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not in the setback.
Yeah, did the relief specifically talk about the deck in the setback?
And what about it specifically?
Did you
We're not
ask-
changing it.
Well, you're changing it by virtue of changing its elevation, if you will. I'm not saying it's a huge problem again, but I think from a technical standpoint, shouldn't that have been mentioned?
I do have some elevation information in terms of the step we're talking about in the building itself. It is approximately a foot. I can't say exactly, but I have elevations on shingle lines. It's about a foot difference in the step you're talking about. So if that were the case, we'd have to raise, well, we're still only raising the tower 2 feet.
Because that entry would have to be.
That entryway, if the entryway has to come up, if that's 5, 6. So yes, I'm sorry, it would end up being 3 feet, not 2.
Yeah, so the entryway would have to be at 9.2.
Right.
I'm not going to give, yeah, or whatever 2 inches is. I mean, I just want to keep it as low as possible,
Sure.
you know, so,
Well, did the relief, what did the relief I can read it if I find it. Did it specifically speak about the 2 feet of?
I can read it.
I have it right here. 2 feet, oh.
You're talking about the 2 feet of the deck, Ed?
Oh, no, I'd say Dan talked about raising the whole thing 2 feet, but it appears that the top of the tower is actually going to go up 3 feet.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at his letter, he says the 2-foot increase in building height is required for compliance with the building code regulations.
So what I'm getting at is that it probably should be continued and then corrected in terms of even the notice that said.
Right, I was just gonna ask Eleanor that. Eleanor, would you need to renotice this if it's?
If the other tower is involved and it's elevating in height, it needs relief.
The other one will meet, the other one will meet the zoning bylaw, though it doesn't need relief on the height. And it's outside the setback. We're talking about this one with the floor having to, will actually be going up 3 feet.
So I would like to see, that elevation plan with both of them showing what's going on with the entryway and what's going on with the tower, right? So, and that, so, but Eleanor, would you have to renotice, or if it's 3 feet instead of 2?
My understanding is we're dealing with the height at, you know, the calculation of the average mean grade height, not the maximum height, right, Dan? I mean, the way you presented the case in your letter, it was going up 2 feet. So that's how I noticed it.
Right, it was going up 2 feet. Most of that was just based on the foundation itself. I don't know, I can't tell you right now without saying 1 foot with that, if there's a step like we're seeing, if that's actually included or not.
I mean, I put approximately 2 foot vertical expansion because one always does need wiggle room.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
But
careful.
is it enough wiggle room that we don't have to renotice?
I mean, the critical thing is he's going to be in compliance with the flood and the building code.
Right.
So it's the special permits being granted pursuant to 13917C7, which is cited in your staff report. And
So
that's
substantively, it doesn't change.
I don't think so. I mean, I would leave it up to you, but
I don't think we need to renotice.
But are we going to continue for better information?
I think so.
I think
I'm one person. I think we should continue.
maybe Mr. McMurrow could attend the next meeting.
He was invited to do so if he wanted to.
I think he could answer a lot of these questions for us.
Right.
Well, hopefully he can put it on the drawings on his as-built, the 2 different floor levels, and then the existing and the proposed.
Yeah, that would be helpful. So, Eleanor, well, is there anyone else on the call that wanted to speak on this one? No. Eleanor, did you get any public comment?
No, I did not.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to continue until next month for more information?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. So to be clear for Dan, sorry, we want the elevations for both sections of the building. Do we want you, Ed, you wanted more information about the deck?
I think if the deck has been there prior to zoning, it's not an issue. So if it was put on after zoning, there needs to be relief for that.
Right. And that would need to be renoticed. Or because that wasn't.
I mean, is that correct? That's how I feel about it.
I mean,
I'm not saying it wasn't there before zoning, but it would be nice to have something in the file that said that was the case.
Okay. So evidence of a building permit or HDC, something. And there's one more thing. I was-
The application claims that that the decks were pre-existing non-conforming.
But from what point, I think is what Ed is saying, right? From what time frame
Right.
were they
Okay.
done with permission?
And it would be helpful to have Ethan because that would be helpful. So, so Lisa, sorry, you made the motion, correct?
Yeah.
Um,
And just can I make one point in the sense that you guys are unable to be accurate with the height? Do you think it makes some sense to give yourself some wiggle room on the setback, or will it be able to go straight up without any chances that you'd be 1.8 feet away from the property line?
I think that's a very good idea, Lisa.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt if we have to continue anyways. If we're going to have to renotice, then we could put that in there. The existing
Well-
foundation is remaining. They're only going straight up, but there's always.
Oh, I see. They're gonna leave that there and then, okay.
right, I think
Right.
he said in the letter they were just adding on top of it.
And yeah, it'd be interesting to know what the floor framing is. That's all staying. They're not changing the floor framing.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so knowing those dimensions and such, just because I would like to just be cognizant of the height.
Okay, so would someone like to second Lisa's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Before I go through the vote, is there anybody who knows they won't be here in July who doesn't want to vote? No. Okay, then I'm just going to read down the list again. So myself is I. Lisa Botticelli.
Aye.
Ed Poole.
Aye.
Michael O'Mara.
Aye.
Karam Kozatek.
Aye.
And Jeff Thayer.
Aye.
Okay.
What's the date of the July meeting you're going to?
9.
The 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next one is 14-20. This is the Westmore Club LLC, 10 Westmore Lane. They requested to withdraw without prejudice. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so Ed makes the motion. Would someone like to second?
Second.
Okay. So I'm just going to read down the list. Lisa?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Karam?
Aye.
And Jim? Jim, are you there?
Aye.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay. So,
Wait, hold on. Who voted there? You, Jim? So what,
so Jim, Karam, Michael, Ed, and Lisa.
and you, so that's,
Oh, I didn't vote. I just went down the list, but
okay,
I just didn't vote. I forgot to call myself, so I just did
all
vote.
right.
So we're going to move on to other business. I am recused on this one, so I will leave the meeting unless you need me for anything else, Eleanor.
No, I'm all set.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Who's taking over? Lisa?
Me. Yes. So this is under other business, application 051-03, Rugged Scott, AKA Beach Plum 40B.
Excuse me, Lisa, Michael O'Mara. I'm not sitting on this, so I don't see any reason to stick around.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You were.
It's not a hearing. It's
Yeah,
not,
why are you sitting on it?
Michael, it's not a hearing. It's a discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, you were listed the last time as present.
I was present and I was sitting at the table, which I think is probably a bad idea, but we decided as a board to do it. So that's correct. I was present.
Okay.
Well, Michael, I think taking that a step further, if you, not necessarily, if you're sitting at the table, you're present. If you decide to get up and leave the room, then you're not sitting. I don't, it's too confusing.
Well, I mentioned as part of the record that I wasn't sitting.
I don't recall, but.
Okay, well, we have plenty of alternates. So, and Michael's not in the minutes as making any statements. And was Mark Poor here last week?
Last month?
Last month, sorry.
Yes, he was.
And Mark, you were part of the hearing?
I've had no participation in this to date.
No, but did you vote on the most recent? I mean, this is a totally separate matter, so it's really irrelevant whether or not.
Okay, so I don't have to worry about it.
Okay, thank you.
We're at a discussion level at this point. It's not a hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, so what are we discussing today? Are we discussing, how do we want to start this? Are we discussing the MUA or, or the,
You have Tucker and Chris
Paul
Young.
Haverty was on.
Yeah, they should still be there, are they not? Tucker and Josh and Jim Timmons and Chris Young and Mr. Attorney Haverty are all present.
Okay. So the issues are intertwined, Lisa, which is normal for this.
Right. I just don't know how we want to start. Who wants to start the discussion? Who wants to make a presentation, bring us up to speed as to where you stand, so that we can get this discussion started?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Hi, it's Tucker Holland. Hey, I'm happy to kind of maybe bring us up to speed in terms of where we are now since the last meeting, if that's helpful.
That would be great.
So, once again, would thank the ZBA for their interest and attention to this matter. You all will recall, this has been kind of a lengthy process dating back to last summer, when we first came before the board. And, just for the record, again, I'm Tucker Holland. I'm here as a resident at 5 Sakenau Place. And I and several other neighbors had been interested in finding out the details of the comprehensive permit requirement that is part of Beach Plum Village with respect to a neighbor amenity access program. And so without going through the whole long history, over the course of the last 10 or 11 months, there have been a number of conversations between homeowners at Beach Plum, an informal group of neighbors within the mapped area that the amenity program is intended to serve, as well as with the developer. And going back to the May ZBA meeting, you'll recall that we had made a lot of progress, I guess is one way of characterizing it, but there were a couple of issues that we were at an impasse regarding. And so following the good discussion that you all had at the May meeting, I think, the party said, well, let's see if we can't, get this across the finish line. I think at one point someone had mentioned, well, maybe this could go to binding arbitration and that sort of thing, which just seems like an awfully big step to take. So continuing in, a good faith effort, we reached out to the developer. It was made clear at the May meeting that, the developer should be a part of this process. And so, through diligent discussion and I'll say compromise, we arrived at the terms, if you will, of the program, which is included in the packet, and I think Eleanor may have on the screen right now. So is this perfect? I don't think there is anybody, myself included. I don't expect any single person would say this is a perfect arrangement, but I think in the spirit of trying to find a reasonable compromise, we ended up saying, this is what this feels like. And so, with that, we signed on to say this program, if implemented as described, in our view, would meet the condition of the comprehensive permit as well as the section of the settlement agreement, which refers to that part of the comprehensive permit. And so with that, I'll turn it over to others and I'm here for questions.
Okay, thank you, Tucker. Does anybody else want to comment on this?
Yes, Madam Chair. This is Paul Haverty, Blattman, Bobrowski, and Haverty, representing Rugged Scott LLC. As I stated last time when we met on this last May, this is something that my client wanted to step back from a little bit to allow the designated representative from the homeowners, which was Howard Edelman, who had been made a trustee of the Homeowners Association at the request of a group of homeowners in the Beach Plum Village. He engaged in extensive, lengthy negotiations with Tucker and other neighbors with regards to the agreement that would be applicable for the use of the amenities. As was discussed, and as Tucker just noted, they got close, but they were unable to bridge the gap completely as of the main meeting. And since that time, my client did get actively involved, did help to bridge the gap, to bring both sides together to an agreement. And in doing that, presented it to the full Homeowners Association. And there were some members of the Homeowners Association who felt that rather than enter into an agreement, they would prefer to continue to fight to try to get terms better than what had been negotiated. My client did not agree with that approach. He felt that the terms that had been agreed to were about as good as could be expected in the perspective of the Homeowners Association. And we certainly took the guidance that was provided by the board, and we certainly read the tea leaves as to where things were going at the board's last hearing. And we believe that if we hadn't come to this agreement with the neighbors, then we were running the risk of the board imposing something that was far more onerous on the Homeowners Association than what was agreed to. So my client did work to execute this agreement with the neighbors on behalf of the Rugged Scott Homeowners Association Trust. It was a valid vote. There were two of the three trustees did vote in favor of this. The third trustee, Mr. Edelman, after observing the backlash to this agreement, decided to resign his position as a trustee. However, there was still a valid vote, and so the trustees have entered into this agreement. It is my client's position that having entered into this agreement and having issued the invitation to the neighbors that was accompanying my letter dated June 5th to the board, the requirements of condition 3.20 of the board's decision have been met. This decision does not require approval of the board of an agreement between the Homeowners Association or the developer and the neighbors. It simply requires that access be allowed subject to a comparable fee structure in accordance with the rules and regulations established with the association. That has been accomplished, that is completed, and it is our position that there's no further role for the board in this process. And as I noted at the last meeting, this is something that the board should not want to be involved in anyways. This is certainly not within the normal purview of what a Board of Appeals would be reviewing as a part of a permit. This was a condition that was included in a decision and in a settlement agreement that was done many years ago, an agreement that would not pass muster under existing HEC and SJC case law with regards to the limit of a board's jurisdiction. However, it is in place. We've moved forward. We've complied with this provision, and we believe that there's no further action necessary from the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak about this?
If I may be heard, Madam Chair, this Attorney James Timmons. I presented a letter in which I indicated I'm writing on behalf of several members of the Rugged Scott Owners Association Trust. To be clear here, just to explain, this Rugged Scott Owners Association Trust was recorded at the Registry of Deeds in 2006. It was recorded as part of, once the settlement was reached, recorded as part of the original packet filed with the registry to get this project launched. Now, the trust purports to represent the homeowners association, but if anyone were to read it, and I have, what it is, it calls itself a SDK trust. It's essentially a trust that the members have absolutely no input on. It's completely controlled by the trustees. When it was set up in 2006, the three trustees were Mr. Posner and two attorneys, one of whom I think represented him on the project. The other one worked with him on the project. So it's really a vehicle of the developer. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, a trustee certificate filed on behalf of the homeowners association was signed with only by Mr. Posner, and it's got a reference to another document. If you look at all the trustee certificates, they're only signed by Mr. Posner, and he refers for his authority to do so to another recorded instrument that's recorded by Rugged Scott LLC. And so this is an entity that was not what we believe was the intent behind Section 3.2 in the original permit. And that's where I'm kind of coming from with my letter. I got a phone call after the May hearing when you folks were revisiting this project by several very disconcerted homeowners who were telling me, that things were going on and they had no control. They wanted to know what their rights were. So I said, well, just send me the homeowners agreement. Send me the bylaws. And they kept referring to a trust, and no one knew where to find this. And then they sent me 2 pages from Section 3.20 of the recorded original permit. And then I started snooping around, and I found this reference to this Rugged Scott Owners Association Trust. Well, that has nothing to do with the homeowners, notwithstanding the fact in the permit, there's a provision, Section 3.2. We acknowledge that subparagraph O speaks to the issues that Mr. Holland introduced today about the neighbors. But Section 3.2 in its entirety speaks to a homeowners association that this zoning board said should be established. And it's clear when you read through it that the board was carefully trying to set up an entity for this association to manage itself. There's a provision in paragraph L of the document where it talks about the fact that nothing can be done with the bylaws. There can't be an amendment to the bylaws unless 3/4 of the affordable units support it and 3/4 of the market rate. And it's very specific that way. And essentially you set up these bylaws to work like, or this association to work like the US Senate, where it wouldn't, there wouldn't be a weighted advantage always for the market rate folks. There's another provision that says that the bylaws of the homeowners association are to be approved by the ZBA. And that was a condition of the permit. Well, the recorded Rugged Scott Homeowners Association Trust that everyone's relying on here to move forward with what's before you shows no indication that it was ever approved by the zoning board. You'll recall the sequence of events that there was a settlement at the, I call it HAC, Housing Appeals Committee, and that was all brought back and then signed off and recorded at the registry. Well, I don't know whether the instrument that was filed right after that settlement, which is this Rugged Scott Association Trust, I don't know if that was ever seen by any zoning board members. And I imagine if it had been seen, it would not have been approved because it's very onerous. There's one person in control. And you have heard that. I reference in my letter some quotes from folks. It seems everyone knows that Mr. Posner controls this entity. So what happened was after the May meeting, when Mr. Toole was talking about the fact that certificates of occupancy were supposed to be withheld until conditions were met. And there were other issues that arose, and frankly, it was that discussion about the garages that sent them my way. They knew I was involved in it, so I got a phone call one day about Beach Plum, and I started to look into it, and I had a very difficult time getting my arms wrapped around it. And it's because of the fact that Beach Plum has been run since 2006 by the developer. The homeowners association has done, they've tried to participate, but I was in a phone call with 7 or 8 homeowners. They all said the same thing, that we give input to Josh, but it's Josh's decision. So the point that I wish to raise before you today is that the homeowners are very upset about this because they have property rights that are implicated here. They understand paragraph O, it's crystal clear. Several of the people I spoke with said that they're sick and tired of the fracture between neighbors and among neighbors and the fractious behavior. And they don't want to be stiff-arming the abutters. They want to have the abutters come in, but they want it done in a certain manner, and they want to make sure that there's some sort of input and consensus. So essentially what I would say to you is this, that while, there are a number of different issues floating in the background you shouldn't address, I do want the board to clearly understand that Mr. Edelman, with whom I've spoken directly, and I understand his perspective here and why he ended up resigning, and others are frustrated with this. They found that some of my input to them about, or questions of them about authority they might have had, or whether they're members of a homeowners association or simply cattle corralled until such time as they're released from the corral, because that's essentially what's happened with this homeowners association trust. And I'd invite anyone to who's interested to look at it. I could send the recording information, but it's in book 1010, page 51. It starts there, and it's an interesting read. So for that reason, I would just say that I wanted to call to your attention what was very apparent to you, that Mr. Posner was the sole signator, that the homeowners aren't being obstructive or dilatory. They know what's going on, but they're very confused. Tucker indicated earlier that he came onto the scene later on as far as this, the amenities rights of the abutters. And that was something that just came to light kind of last fall among some of the abutters. So I think there's a lack of clarity here about rights. I told the homeowners I would come to the zoning board, or I recommended we come to the zoning board first and tell you that. They don't want to have action taken and then just pursue it by way of a lawsuit, but that was the initial discussion. So I think I would like to take more time for me to meet with the homeowners association and inform these folks what I found or what I think their rights and their obligations are. Tucker Holland and I we finally able to catch up with each other, and he made several very valid points that while there may be 5 different resolutions, all of which are great, and he doesn't want to just go back in time and have other good resolutions delay things. So I'm not looking to delay here, but I think the homeowners have a right to be better informed and to have a little more input here into property rights that they have. One of the other things in the special permit, the comprehensive permit, is you talk in paragraph O about the fact that the property owners or the association, which I take to be the property owners, can come up with reasonable regulations to ensure that their quiet enjoyment of their homes is not disturbed by the use of this, or it's only minimally or reasonably disturbed by the use of the amenities. So they have rights here. They want to avail themselves of them. And part of the reason there's a lack of consensus is a lot of the market rates live all over the eastern seaboard, I would say. And so it's been hard to get everybody together, but I think people are alert now and aware that they need to react to this. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the board.
Okay, you're welcome. Since we don't vote on this, I mean, what's our?
Well, what I'm looking for is just that there not be a declaration of victory. I don't want to see this thing closed. I want to see, and I know that Mr. Toole addressed in May the question of the occupancy certificates. There's a tension here between the rights of the abutters who want to come in and the rights of the homeowners in the association to have an agreement that they're comfortable with. So I'm just asking that you understand that the homeowners believe this to still be on the drawing board.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else from the public wish to speak?
Madam Chair, it's Chris Young. I'm sorry that my video is off at the moment. But I would just add that I appreciate what was just said by Jim, and I would be perfectly willing to continue the conversation as well. As Tucker mentioned, we feel it's a perfect resolution, and so if leaving the matter open for further discussion pleases the board, I would be very interested in continuing the conversation myself. I feel that some of the core issues were not satisfactorily addressed from my perspective and a few other people's, but it was, there was a kind of running out of steam moment when people just took the compromise approach. So if there's a continued conversation to be had, I would be more than happy to participate in that. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, this is Paul Haverty again. I want to point out the terms of the comprehensive permit have been complied with. I haven't heard a single issue in terms of a specific concern with the agreement that was reached. There's nothing that's been said that is arguing that there was a provision of the memorandum of understanding that was inappropriate, that was unfavorably weighted against the unit owners or unfavorably weighted against the neighbors. My client has done exactly what he was supposed to do in making sure that this came to fruition and that the terms of the comprehensive permit were complied with. If the neighbors and the unit owners at a later date wish to modify this agreement, it's certainly within their rights. But that does not mean that the terms of the comprehensive permit have not been complied with. It is my client's position that he's entitled at this point to seek the certificates of occupancy for the last 2 units in this project, and there is no legitimate reason why they should be held up. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could address that, I would say that the one concern that, if he wants a specific concern, it is that the agreement was drafted to have an end date of 3 years from this summer, and we felt like the original agreement was not to have an offer that would expire, and so I think that that's something that specifically we would like to address further. The language, as I read it, suggests that this is an opportunity for the abutters to fairly compensate the association for use of the amenities, not necessarily to have a limited window in which to sign up for that opportunity. So, and if, as you suggested, we could readdress this later, I think once that 3-year window closed, I don't see any reason why they would want to readdress it. So that would be weighting it unfairly against the others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ed.
I for one, feel like some more work needs to be done. And it's, for me, it's not specifically about the agreement between the homeowners and the association and the neighbors, but the question of the COs, which Mr. Haverty brought up. He is taking the position that they're all good and those COs should be issued. I don't believe that that is the case. Ms. Hanley wrote a letter as well. What I'd like to do is take more time to, I think those letters were dated June 5th. I can't remember what the other one was, but I'd like to get town council's opinion because I do not agree that the final CO should be issued at this point.
Now, is town council on the call?
Yes.
Great.
He doesn't have video, but he's on the audio.
Okay. So could you address that?
I hope he has
Who
audio.
is it? Eleanor, I can't remember.
George Pucci.
George Pucci, okay. George, are you on?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, good. I don't know why, I was on a court conference and I entered the meeting late. I don't know why it won't let me on by video, but I listened in on the last 10 minutes or so. I just got on the call. You know, the condition is, it really should have been decided before the issuance of the building permit. And I'm assuming that that's why it carried over, that the applicant is agreeing to tie this to the final certificates of occupancy. The condition provides that, you know, the legal documents in the final draft form for this neighborhood association issue is submitted to the ZBA for approval, you know, prior to that. So it's really up to the ZBA if it's comfortable with the legal documents as presented. However, if someone's objected to it, you know, and that's raising issue for the ZBA that maybe they're not satisfied with that, you know, the resolution, it certainly warrants, you know, further discussion on that issue. So, you know, I came to the meeting late, but so if that's not addressing what exactly your question is, I can answer a different one.
Well, I think, Ed, were you asking George's opinion on the issue on the COs specifically?
Yeah, I'm definitely asking how they're intertwined, and my understanding was that again, it's in the file that I read, or it's in the paperwork that is part of the packet.
Yeah,
as I read it, some of the COs on specific lots should never have been issued, and somewhere else in the process, the COs for the final lots were tied to this agreement as well. So it was a two-pronged situation. The first was the garages, and that matter needed to be resolved. And then it became this homeowners, this agreement as part of the discussion. And neither one in my mind is resolved at this point. So therefore, I don't think the final CO should be issued.
Can I just interject? Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I agree with what Ed's saying. I think, you know, part of the issue is, I think you have to start now. So, you know, whether or not certain certificates should have been issued or not before, and I understand exactly what Ed is saying. You know, the fact is the ship has sailed, those certificates did issue. And now you have an issue that the applicant itself has agreed that, you know, they're tying these final certificates onto this unresolved issue about the non-resident membership issue.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I would just go back to the original condition in the permit, which I've looked at, section 3.2, small letter O, And it talks about, you know, what the requirements are for that non-resident homeowners, you know, the amenities issue.
Yeah.
And it also provides in there that it, you know, that shall be submitted for approval by the ZBA. So that's where you're at this point. Applicant has already agreed to, you know, that they're agreeing that, you know, these final certificates are tied to the ZBA's approval of the legal document for this issue.
Mhm.
So, you know, I definitely think you're within your right to, you know, further discuss it if you need to, or rule on it however it is that you want. If, you know, hopefully the issues that have been raised in opposition to the agreement that was reached are, you know, issues that can be resolved reasonably soon so that the applicant isn't held, you know, forever on this. But, you know, I don't know specifically what those issues are, but, you know, the long and the short of it is you have the right to approve this final agreement before you issue these certificates. And if issues have been raised to you that you're not satisfied and you're not ready to approve it, then, you know, I would recommend you go ahead and do whatever it is you need to do to get to the point where you have something before you that you can approve concerning this issue.
Okay, thank you. Do any other board members have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
I have a question. Paragraph 1, if fewer than 10 join, we will offer the opportunity again in the spring of 2021 and 2022. After that, no more memberships will be offered. Does that mean that after 22, as people drop out of this, no more memberships will be offered? Tucker, is that your take on that?
I'm sorry, Jeff. So in general, I think the idea here, again, there are sort of some back and forth, if you will, and there are elements that we ended up with agreeing upon. With this aspect, the idea, it was relayed to us that it was important to the homeowners in these conversations with the developer. It was important to the homeowners that this be a program of limited duration. That the idea being that the impact, the feeling is this program was part of the original permit because it impacted a neighborhood. And so therefore, certainly folks that were in the neighborhood when this was developed were impacted. And so it's sort of our view that this was a bit of mitigation for that impact. I think it gets a little harder to say that someone buying a home, for example, on Sakenau 20 years from now is buying that home because they have the expectation of being a part of this program. At that point in time, they're really buying into a neighborhood that they like. So that's where it was agreed to for the purposes of this, you know, agreement, that to be offering this program for the next 3 years. So folks in the area to raise your hand sometime during the next 3 years if you want to be a part, seemed like a reasonable time frame to allow people to make a decision. Obviously, this season is such a crazy time in the world. To have several years in order to make a decision seemed appropriate.
Okay, I understand that, and I appreciate your thinking. And if you guys truly agree to that, I guess I'm okay with it. I guess I have a little bit of a problem with the fact that this is only being offered up now. In my mind, it's something that developer probably should have offered as soon as those amenities were constructed. At that point, I think he should have offered it to the neighbors who were.
I agree with you.
So,
I agree with you.
I think you guys are, you know, I think you might be giving up a little bit more than I would personally.
If I can just say, I agree 100%, and Chris may have a different perspective. So,
yes, if you don't mind me jumping in, Tucker, I respectfully disagree with Tucker's opinion on that. I think that for 14 years, we've effectively been denied use of the amenities. The people that were impacted, as Tucker mentioned originally, many of them have moved on and never got to enjoy the use of the amenities. So to now open a window for 3 years seems to me to be contrary to the spirit of the settlement that was made, and certainly does not take into account any of the lost use of those amenities. Many of our families have grown up, let's face it, the pool is best enjoyed with your families. And so for many people, the opportunity to use the amenities has come and gone. And so I strongly disagreed with the fact that they tried to limit it. I understand why the beach club owners would not want it to be open-ended. However, that was the agreement that was settled on back in the original court case. So I believe that provision especially should be reviewed and redacted in our opinion. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, can I say something?
Sure. Who is this?
Josh.
Okay. Go ahead, Josh.
Just a couple of points on things that have been raised. So I've said this a number of times. We had always said that we would do the offer of the amenities when the project was getting close to being completed, because that was how we could, there was no requirement that it be done earlier than that. And that was how, in my mind, we could involve the other current owners in defining and describing the program that would be put in place, since there's a range of options there. So I appreciate what Chris is saying in terms of wishing that the amenities had been offered earlier, but I've been saying for the very, very long time that this project has been under development through recession and recovery, that this was when we were going to do it. As far as the actual terms, we were very close on, not we, but Howard Edelman and
Excuse me one second. Josh, have you got anything in the record? Have you ever written anything to that effect, that it's always been your position that these amenities were not going to be offered until the project was complete? Is that something you ever said in a letter or an email to anybody who asked you?
Maybe. I would have to go back. I mean, it wasn't said a lot. I don't know that it was said at the zoning board. I can't remember that. I know that individual neighbors have asked about it from time to time, going back to the original construction of the pool. And that's how I answered them. Now, on the question of these various terms, we were close to it. There was a 16-point agreement, you'll remember, back in May. And basically all of them were agreed to except for two, having to do with the initial payment and the annual payment. And one of the things that was agreed to was an open-ended program. Didn't have a time limit. In working out the final deal back and forth with Tucker and me shuttling back and forth with Howard before he resigned, I knew that the limitation of the number of years was something that was important to the owners if they could get it. And so we came up with a number of different elements, and that's where the discussion ended up. So the people who Mr. Timmons is representing, who I've spoken with, we had a big Zoom call after a week or so ago to talk about this whole thing as it was coming to fruition. Their concern is that it be 1 year, not 3 years. And they're concerned that the initial payment be $30,000, not $2,500. And they're concerned that the annual payment is too low, not too high. So, as Tucker said, nothing's perfect, and this was a negotiation, and this is something that I think is reasonable. And many owners, by the way, have written to me and said that they support where we've ended up, which is not to say that it's 100%. And then just one final point, and that is that I believe that the Rugged Scott Owners Association Trust bylaws were submitted and approved by the zoning board as part of the package of approving the project back in 2005, 2006. There's certainly no secret. They're recorded in the registry. They're reviewed by every buyer, and they're there for everybody to see. And the idea is that the developer is held legally responsible for carrying out the duties of the homeowners association until the last home is sold. And the reason for that is not to keep homeowners down, but it's to make sure that you, the zoning board, and the community has somebody to hold accountable for following through on the various commitments that are made in the development. So we've been meeting informally with the owners ever since there were owners. And at a certain point, the owners asked if one of them could become one of the formal trustees, and we did that. And there's been a lot of talk about getting ready for the time when the last unit is sold, at which point the owners democratically elect all trustees. And I would go away, and presumably Arthur Reed would go away, and they would pick whoever they wanted to be the 3 trustees, and they would have the bylaws in place. When you're buying a unit, you want to know what the rules are going to be. And so that's why these bylaws are created in advance. So I know this is complicated, and I'm sorry the zoning board has gotten dragged into all of this, but we really feel like we've done what we're supposed to do. And it's not a big surprise that different people in a group of 38 homeowners would have different opinions on whether the terms for the non-resident membership would be the right terms or the wrong terms or the best terms, or we should hold out for more. But that's where we are from my perspective.
Madam Chair, I have some comments.
It's 3 o'clock.
I just have an overall question for George as to what the board's oversight is on these matters. I know we tied it to the CO, so I guess this type of agreement does fall within our purview, but in listening to Attorney Haverty, he's saying that this is beyond our oversight. So, I mean, we have that initial question as to how much we need to delve into this type of minutia. And I was just wondering if you have an opinion on that, George.
Yeah, it's not the greatest drafting in the world, the original permit. Again, section 3.2 small o. And then where the operative part is about your oversight ability is in section 4.1. Prior to application for a building permit, applicant shall submit for approval by the ZBA. And then it has a colon with a whole bunch of items that you have the ability to approve. Small letter M, as in Matthew, is clubhouse. Well, first it says under J, legal documents in their final draft form, including association bylaws. And then under small letter M, clubhouse, pool, tennis court, hours of operation, and guidelines. And then it has a paren, C 3.2, small letter O. So that's where your provision comes from. And it's not a model of draftsmanship, but it definitely, I mean, if you read that in conjunction with section 3.20, which it specifically references, that talks about your ability to approve this agreement, this condition, which is with respect to the non-resident membership framework. So, I would argue that you do have the ability you have the right to approve this, or they have the obligation to get your approval for it. And originally, you could have denied a building permit based on your approval of that. And now you're at the point where you've got your final certificates of occupancy. So in my opinion, you do have the ability to approve or not approve this condition set forth in 3.20 to your satisfaction. And again, the fact that somebody, I should add, the fact that somebody may object to it, or a number of people may object to it, isn't relevant for your jurisdiction to approve it or not. The only thing that's relevant about it is if you think that there have been, legitimate questions or concerns raised to it that, what has been presented to you is not in compliance with the original condition, then that's a different story. Then it is relevant that there's some type of opposition and you're not satisfied that you're at the point yet that you want to approve it. But no matter the passage of time and all the documents and correspondence back and forth, it basically comes down to just these original, fairly short provisions in the original permit. So that's what you're going under.
Okay. In general, I think this agreement does meet the spirit of that, even though it's a one-line provision in the comprehensive permit. But I do, like Jeff, have an issue with the term of this, or the 3 years. I think it should be ongoing and should be limited in the same manner that it's limited in the comprehensive permit to whatever the range of the outside members. But as far as all this other part about the homeowners association and was it formed correctly, I agree with the developer that's pretty standard, that the developer maintains control. The trust documents were all of record when these buyers purchased their homes, and this is that part of it is simply a matter of your typical HOA and people buying houses not really understanding that they're part of a mini government, really. And they do have the ability to change them once the developer is out of the picture, but that part of it to me is not relevant. So I would say that if I would be I would lean toward approving this if that's what we're going to do, with the removal of the 3-year term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, could I respond? I'm sorry.
Yes, who's speaking?
I will defer to Board Member Toole.
No, go ahead. I'll wait.
Thank you very much. If I could respond to Attorney Pucci's comments. Section 3.20 of the comprehensive permit decision does have a provision that states the association shall establish hours of operation for the facility and guidelines for occupancy, noise, and lighting that preserve the rights of nearby residents to quiet enjoyment of their property, which shall be subject to final ZBA approval. Absolutely no disagreeing that the board had the right to review that, and I presume did when building permits were issued beginning back in 2007 or whenever. But then this provision goes on to state, notwithstanding the above resident restriction, abutting property owners as shown on a map attached hereto as Exhibit D shall be allowed access to the facility subject to a comparable fee structure and in accordance with the rules and regulations established by the association. A minimum of 10 non-resident family memberships shall be offered, and a maximum of 30 non-resident family memberships may be allowed by vote of the association. That does not provide for any oversight by the board as to the terms and provisions of this agreement. What it does is require the applicant or require the association to make 10 non-resident memberships available at minimum, 30 non-resident family memberships available at maximum. It does not provide for a length of time and when that should be in place. And I recognize that this was the product of a settlement negotiation. I do agree with Attorney Pucci that the drafting of this language could have been better. It could have been more precise to give all of the parties a better understanding of exactly what was required. But I do not think that it can be fairly interpreted to require the board's approval for this non-resident provision. It specifically leaves that to the rules and regulations established by the association.
Well, there's something in our packet, Paul, on page 192 that says under settlement agreement, the number 9 clubhouse pool tennis court facility. Rugged Scott also agrees to comply with condition 3.20 of the decision, and in addition will present and discuss with a representative group of abutters its proposed guidelines on these matters before submitting them to the board for approval.
Which my client has done.
Which they've done.
Right, but it does reference coming to us for approval.
That's for the hours of
I
operation.
would agree with that. I would think that would be the approval of the agreement.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not specific about it being the hours, but.
Well, I just have to interject. I agree with a lot of what Paul said, but it is what it is. I mean, you have there's no question you have the approval jurisdiction. The only question is the scope of your approval authority. And what I'm saying about the kind of the ambiguity about the provisions is, you know, what's the scope of your ability to approve what's coming before you? And if there are issues being raised that, you know, that can be worked out, that you're more satisfied that you're approving something that makes sense for that development and it's in the spirit and the letter of the original condition, I think you're on solid grounds to at least explore that and see it through. I mean, if the developer has an objection to something that you're trying to impose on that, then that's a different story. He can address that with you and, you know, you try to work that out. But, you know, it's like one of those can we all get along type of situations.
Right.
What can we come up with that satisfies the board so that they can approve this?
I agree.
And I fully understand Attorney Pucci's comment. And in fact, it's sort of the position that my client is in right now, in which there's been a comment that the board wants to see a particular provision of the agreement stricken so that it is applicable in perpetuity to the association. And here my client is essentially arguing to the board that you should leave the argument as drafted in order to protect the association. Meanwhile, the association is saying that we shouldn't approve the agreement that my client entered into. So it's a difficult position for everyone. And I stick with what I had stated previously, that this is not a position that the board really ever should have been placed in the first instance. This is not something that an appointed Board of Appeals would normally and typically be involved in. And I think it puts you in a difficult position, leaving my client out of it. Just, you know, to have to mediate between the unit owners and the neighbors puts you in a difficult position. And I believe that you would be best off to just simply let the agreement stand as drafted and let everybody move forward and go from there. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm not prepared to vote on this.
Okay, hang on, Ed. Mr. Timmons, did you want to say one thing?
Thank you. The issue for me is permit compliance. The problem with the garages is they violate the permit. At least that's our position, and that's being reviewed and hopefully resolved. The issue with this agreement is that in the permit, the original comprehensive permit, you talk about input from the association and the homeowners and everything. And notwithstanding how everyone is characterizing this, the fact of the matter is the homeowners feel left out in the dark. It's said that this is a matter of record, this homeowner association trust. It's recorded, it's at the registry, but every single person I talked to said, we didn't get a copy of this in our closing package. No one told us about this. All we ever knew was Mr. Posner was in charge of the project. I agree with what Mr. Mondani's saying about, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, but
You did.
about, you know, this approach to doing a 40B project. But if you read the actual trust, you know, there's generally transitional language. And the fact of the matter is, you know, we're talking about 40 out of 42 units that are sold. You're talking about substantial property interests of people who now are involved here. And whoever said early on, this really should have been taken care of at the beginning. That's how these trusts are supposed to work. When the developer is doing the project, he controls it during the development stage. Right now, the roads are in, the infrastructure's in, everything's done. He just hasn't sold 2 homes. That's it. And as far as Mr. Haverty's argument that, whom I have great respect for, we've dealt with each other a bit, but I chafe even every time I hear him say that this is not really enforceable. This was the product of an agreement between parties. It wasn't an imposition by the zoning board. The parties sat down and this is how they resolved the case back in 07. So it's almost essentially a contract here, but in any event, the language stands. And I think 3.2 was giving these, the intent of the zoning board was to give this homeowners association more of a role than it's had at this point in time. And that's why we're here. It's the bigger picture. It's not the minutiae of the particular agreement in front of you. Thank you.
May I make a comment?
Of course.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this format, so I just wanted to make sure you knew that I was speaking. Mary Ann Hanley, I've been working with Rugged Scott for several years now. I wasn't in the trenches when the original permit hearings were conducted, but I can guarantee you that these documents were all approved and shown to the zoning board ahead of time. They're all on the record. Every single person that bought a piece of property in there got a purchase and sales agreement, got a deed, all of which enumerated all of these documents. They all had attorneys that they could have gotten copies from. I know, trust me, I know from fact that several of them go online at the registry all the time and look at them because they call with questions about them. In addition, there's been homeowners associations meetings. They've gotten a bill from the homeowners association every year to pay for the improvements, to pay for the clubhouse, you know, to pay for the staff that cleans the toilets, to pay for the lifeguards that they're going to, you know, the people they have to get. For someone to come at this point and say that nobody knew about this homeowners association and it was never for the benefit of the homeowners, it's just wrong. And it really takes us away from the fact, what's the issue today? The issue today is whether or not the developer has complied with setting up this neighborhood membership program. He sat down with a group of representative homeowners. They've gone through this. The negotiations were long and hard. The homeowners in the association were kept aware of what was going on. And we have actually sent out invitations to 33 homeowners. They're waiting to join. You know, it's June 25th. So we did what we're supposed to do. We've got, from the conversations I've heard, at least 4 or 5 people in the neighborhood that want to sign up. You know, they want to be members. And it doesn't, at this point, make any sense to go back and forth and say, well, you know, not everybody's happy about it. We'd like to see something else. The reality of the situation is the developers has done what he's supposed to do. They've looked at the homeowners' documents, the homeowners' expenses. They've come up with a plan that would, and they proposed it to the neighbors. And they're free to join. You know, the 10 people that want to join are free to join. So I think we need to get that done and get that resolved. If the homeowners want to sit down with the neighbors and revise these terms in the fall, there's nothing stopping them from doing that, okay? But I think at this point, get it done, get the homes, the last 2 homes sold, then the homeowners association can be finally turned over to all the homeowners and they can commiserate with the neighbors. They can change the rules. They can make the rules less lenient. They can make them more lenient, but basically they have to offer them these memberships and they've done that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, did you want to say something?
No, I'll wait.
I just released an account. Sorry.
Excuse me?
Madam Chair, can I ask Attorney Hanley to also speak to the occupancy permit for the, with regard to the garages? Because I don't think we have covered that too specifically so far.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yes, I sent a letter to George, and George and I talked about that yesterday, and he agrees with me that the occupancy permits are not tied to the garage issue. I believe, and as I said, I haven't been a party to most of the negotiations for this neighborhood membership thing, and I haven't attended the meetings, but it was my understanding that at some point there was discussion that the last two certificates would be upheld until the neighborhood membership offering was made. So there's not much that we need to talk to going back to the garages and the COs, because that was never the intention. The vote that was taken was only to withhold COs on three distinct lots. And those lots, after the garage hearings closed, the COs issued for those lots.
So Marion, are you saying that the garage issue has been finalized? That's not my understanding.
It's been finalized before the board made a decision.
No, but
We closed the public hearing, and that was, that was what you
That
had
I
told.
don't think was the intent of the board at all. The intent was to withhold the COs until the issue was resolved, not until we closed the hearing. And the issue definitely isn't resolved, as far as I know.
It's based on my review of the record and the minutes, and I actually sat down and looked at the old, meeting videos. The three COs were to be withheld on the three lots that were released, 38, 39, and 40, until the garage hearings, which were in process at that time and continued thereafter, were resolved, and those were resolved. And since then,
They aren't resolved. They
about
aren't
10
resolved.
COs have issued since then.
I'm not saying the COs haven't issued, but they shouldn't have. And I think it was wrong of your client to go get them when he knew that the issue was tied to the garage. When he knew that the COs were tied to the garage, which is not resolved as far as I know. Now, if George wants to correct me and the issue has been, the garage issue is resolved, that's a different matter. I'll be quiet about it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to say a little different than what I'm saying. That whether or not the certificate should have issued, the fact is that they did issue. And no, the garage issues are not resolved. They're both under active litigation at Housing Appeals Committee, both of those lots in question involving the garage issues. So that's not resolved, but it's not something actively before the board because the HAC is going to rule on that. They have pending motions before it. The only, and so it really is neither here nor there because you're talking about certificates of occupancy for these other two remaining lots, and everybody's in agreement that you've got to resolve this non-resident issue before those certificates issue. So I'm not, unless I'm missing something, and I'm happy to answer any question on it, I don't think that it's worthwhile continuing to argue about, the garage lots, because those are under litigation. The certificates are already issued on them, whether or not that was correct or not. And now you're just here with these two remaining certificates on unrelated lots, and you have the outstanding issue of the non-resident membership issue.
So Ed, were you thinking that the two remaining COs were tied to the garages as well?
No, I would have to say, unless there's something specific that Ed or the board is pointing to, that there was, another agreement or some type of provision reached with the applicant that I'm not privy to, I would not tie the final certificates of occupancy on these final two lots to the issue of the ongoing dispute and litigation on the garages on the unrelated lots. In my opinion, I would not tie those at this point.
Specifically because the COs have already been issued.
Correct, Ed.
Yeah,
Right.
even though the letter was in the file. It's a done deal. I get it. I'm not arguing that point. I do think it was disingenuous to go try to get those COs or obtain them, but it's been done. So it is what it is on that.
Okay. I agree with Ed's point on that. I remember that pretty clearly, and I think, well, my recollection is a little bit foggy, but I don't feel the COs on those three lots should have been issued, and I do feel that at a minimum, we should be able to continue to hold COs until that garage issue has been resolved, but I guess that point is moot, has been made pretty clear. And just for the record, I'm not willing to agree to this memorandum or this agreement with a time limit on the membership as they are. I think that these memberships should be available to any homeowners in the future in that subject neighborhood.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
just briefly, the garage issue was resolved locally, but it was resolved against the developer. The conclusion was he had violated the permit. And the appeal is by the developer up at Hack. So I don't know how we call that resolved, but my take of it, having participated, and this is what brought me into it at this point, and what I'm looking at now, is just permit compliance. That's it. So, and I thought that was what Mr. Toole was seeking to do, was simply to say, look, we're not going to hold up the whole project, but you're not going to shut this thing down until we have permit compliance here. Because Mr. Pucci made the statement earlier that generally people don't get building permits until there's full compliance. And then there's just been things that have happened along the way in this project where, we're alleging, or people I represent, that it's gone awry. And I thought that's what Mr. Toole was trying to address. And I was happy for the fact that, he had done so. And there's a letter in the May packet on page 143 where I thought he was trying to firm up that. That's the one I know we're discussing, but I thought it was in furtherance of that agreement. So thank you.
So, Ed, how do you feel?
Well, I stated I'm not prepared. I mean, I'm prepared to vote if you want to vote, but I'm not happy with the agreement, with the time limit either.
Jim, I think we got who's the fifth person that would be voting on this? Since Michael is off. Karam. He's been very quiet.
Yes, I have. I'm taking it all in. Ed, I agree with you on a couple of points. Jeffrey, same deal. I remember you specifically saying that they'd be held so the board would have teeth. And right now, I think we're trying to use our teeth, and the developer and the attorneys representing the developer are saying otherwise, that they've pretty much done what they said that they were going to do. So yeah, I tend to agree with what Jeffrey said. I don't like a time limit on that either. But if we're going to vote on something today, we could put something out there. I don't know if it's going to be favorable for the developer, but it is what it is.
Okay. So what do you think then? What would you guys like to do? Does somebody want to try a motion? Or continue?
I'd like them to go away and come back with something that's mutually agreed upon.
I concur.
with a more representative of the board, or just with, I mean, Chris Young obviously voiced his opinion about, or his desire to get rid of that stipulation. So mutually agreeable by who? Do we need to be more specific? Only because they came with something that was mutually agreed upon.
Well,
Can I
Would
just
the
speak to that?
developer?
I think the manner in which they met and all is acceptable. And again, what was contemplated, I don't think there's any question about the makeup of the HOA and the trust. I mean, you can question the terms of it, but they're of record. And before anybody bought, they could have seen it and reviewed it and not bought if they didn't agree with it. So in terms of the parties who negotiated this, I'm okay with it. And if the HOA or the developer appoints a rep, that to me makes sense. And it appears the HOA voted on this, and that's what I would expect in this development, even though it's developer heavy on the board. I think that to me, there shouldn't be any issues with it. And in terms of the homeowners, the non-members, or however we're calling, there's a pretty good representation there. So I don't think that should be questioned. That's just my view.
Right.
I think I agree with you, Jim. And I think the way it stands right now, Josh is the person who makes these decisions for the homeowners association. And if Josh were willing to remove that condition with a time limit, I, as one board member, would support that agreement.
One other comment. I just don't want to muddy the water with not enough homeowners were involved in this, or other homeowners have differing views. I mean, that's the whole point of the HOA. So, and I think we should go with it, at least with their representation.
I agree with that. I mean, I think it's a little hard to get 36 different households to an agreement as to the best way to pursue something, and that's why you have an HOA.
If I could say something along the lines of what George Pucci said, in terms of, can't we just all find something that we can all live with here and get along? I'm trying to find something that people can live with. I know that the people that Jim Timmons is representing want fewer years offered, not more. Higher prices, not less. But Beach Plum's own proposal back in May was an ongoing program. So if you were to vote for something that said, we approve the memorandum of agreement or understanding that was submitted, with the proviso that the term not end in 3 years, I think that might get us to resolution. Not with the people that Attorney Timmons is representing, but perhaps with the zoning board, and I'm sure the neighbors would like it better.
Well,
we know the neighbors would like it better.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, the people there is not that sort of consensus. So, and I understand why Mr. Posner is saying what he's saying. I'm saying he's inaccurate, not that he's motivated to be inaccurate. It's just that I've talked to several people, and in a community like this, there's a divergence of thoughts on this. And that's part of the problem, is not everyone understood that they had the ability to say anything or do anything. And that's what I'm looking to do, is have that community just talk. And everyone needs to understand what's going on, and then they make one decision. But not everyone. There are a number of people who are looking to embrace the abutters, just to be clear. It's not that people are looking for harsher terms to exclude the abutters. That's not the case at all. And I want to make sure that's clear to the board. Thank you.
That's what they told me. That's all. If you may be right, that's fine.
Yeah, understood.
So what do we want to do here?
Make a motion to continue to the July meeting.
Second.
Okay. I will do a roll call vote. Ed, you made the motion.
Aye.
Kiram,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Jeff. Jeff
Aye.
there?
Aye.
I think I heard that, aye. And I will vote aye as well.
You do have Mark on there as well if you want to include.
Oh, Mark, okay, so I can get 6. Mark?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate it, members of the board.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So do I need to get a motion to adjourn?
I'll
We don't
make
have
a
any other
motion.
business, correct?
We have no, yeah, do we have any
Yeah,
other?
do a roll call vote to adjourn.
Okay.
I'm seconding Ed's motion.
Okay, so Ed,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
and I votes in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.